Hello and welcome to the Smells Like Infinite Sadness podcast. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. For those of you who don't know, I run the website, smellslikeinfinitesadness.com. It's a blog covering the best alternative rock from the 80s and 90s up to present day. I'm a proud middle-aged Gen Xer who is still obsessed with the music of his youth and loves to talk about it. But if you've also been following my blog, you know I also love to talk about terrible movies. I'm obsessed with movies that are so bad they're good. And we've just started a new podcast series called Smells Like Cinematic Sadness. I'm so clever. But we're covering basically the best and bad films. And my co-host is my friend Damon Shell. We've bonded over bad films ever since our college days. And we've always had fun seeking out the best of the worst. Last week we kicked things off with The Raw Deal, a infamously bad Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. So be sure to check that out if you listened to it already. But we also are moving into a new series where we're going to discuss the best in, how should I put it, really bad horror or fantasy films featuring small creatures. We're calling it All the Small Things. We initially had great plans of doing an entire episode on a variety of different films, and we decided there was so much material we should split it up. So we're going to kick things off with Mac and Me. Mac and Me was a 1988 E.T. ripoff. It's truly bizarre and god-awful. It's probably best known for two things. One is a really odd dance sequence in a McDonald's restaurant, very 80s. And the other one is a scene featuring a boy in a wheelchair flying off a cliff. This was probably best known by Paul Rudd showing this clip on various late-night talk shows, including Conan O'Brien. So we're going to discuss how Mac and Me got made, why it got made, why it flopped, and why it's such a strange, terrible film that's still worth your while just to watch it because it actually exists and it's kind of magical in and of itself. So we're going to do that for this week, and then we're going to follow that up with the Leprechaun series and the infamous Black Devil Doll from Hell, which is another really great little evil creature film. But let's kick things off with Mac and Me. Sit back and enjoy.
It's about more than friendship. It's about adventure. Mac and Me.
And what we're going to do today, of course, is talk about one of the most annoying yet, I guess, prominent movie themes of sci-fi and horror in the 80s and 90s, which was little creatures either trying to be scary, which makes them inherently funny because little things generally aren't scary, or trying to be cute and cutesy and heartwarming. And both of those things are, of course, inspired, I guess, by two films really that kind of got that copycat thing going. That was E.T. and
Yes.
and Gremlins, because both those two are kind of the gold standard of good version of those films, you know, where there was
exactly, yeah.
where,
And some filmmakers had good intentions, you know, to make some of these films after, but most of them were just there to rip it off and knock it off. But I mean, I think we've got, you know, probably some of the ones we'll discuss are obvious, just blatant knockoffs with no concern for what the hell they were doing. But I think one or two of them actually had some legitimate, feeling behind it, even though God knows it didn't come through the film.
the feeling was bad.
And the feeling was not mutual.
So we got four films, or actually one franchise. So we're going to discuss the Leprechaun franchise.
Yeah.
We're gonna delve into Mac and Me.
Whee!
And then we're gonna close out with the creme de la creme, the crap topper of known as Black Devil Doll from Hell.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the one to end on for sure for that for that series. All right, so our next edition here is Mac and Me, which starred who did that star? Do we even know who that? No, there wasn't any big names.
No, there wasn't any big names.
The actress, the mom, was someone who was quite familiar, but anyway, so this he's an alien who kind of looks like E.T. It's an obvious E.T. ripoff, and it's kind of a saccharine sweet version of E.T. Without any kind of suspense or feeling or emotion for any of the characters. But again, one of the things that drew us to that was the cover art too. I think what drew us to that, and I'm gonna say it here, that way before Paul Rudd introduced that wheelchair rolling down on Conan as his film clip every time. Michael and I, that actual photo of that wheelchair going down the hill was on the back of the cover art, if I vaguely remember. It was very small. So we picked this up, and this had to be, what year was this? This was like 90.
Yeah, we watched like 90, I think like 93, 94 around that time.
So it's really early. So as soon as we saw that, it was like, okay. I was more of a champion for it than you were. I was really pushing for that one. We finally agreed to take it home, and it had its moments overall, but it's one of those definitely that you kind of have to fast forward through. But Michael can tell you a little bit more about the story behind this. I just thought it was just a ripoff, but apparently, there was McDonald's was somehow involved in getting this thing made, not directly, but kind of indirectly. But if you got some of the info for that, again, we can.
Oh yeah. It came out in 1988, and it was described by the producer as a new generation's E.T., which it did not become that.
It became a no generation's E.T.
Yeah. I mean, do you even remember? I remember the name as a kid, but I don't remember seeing a trailer for it. I don't remember anybody I know going to see it. It was.
I don't remember. Yeah.
So basically,
I basically didn't know it existed. I think until I saw it in the video store. It was that obscure.
Looks like it came out on August 12th, 1988, and vanished 2 weeks later, grossing a meager $6 million, according to this article from Thrillist. And it was discovered in the 1990s. And I'm scrolling through here. All right, so the man behind Mac and Me apparently tried to go through McDonald's as a marketing gimmick. So I guess the producer was familiar with the Ronald McDonald House Charities, and he says here it was a time for another generation to have its E.T. Here we go. So I came up with Mac and his family. Mac stood for mysterious alien creature. It did not mean Big Mac, even though that's what you would.
Yeah. Okay.
And so apparently that they made this film, try to get it with a McDonald's tie-in, and that of course leads into the infamous scene where there's a huge dance scene at a McDonald's.
Yeah, this was like a fever dream. I mean, you got to see this thing.
And of course, let's not forget to mention the main character had spinal bifida and was
the actor in the character, and this was also part of the I believe the director was or not the director, the writer was one of the people who was really wanted to kind of have a story for kids who had some, difficulties or disabilities and things like this, to make a kind of a hero, character that was the main character. So he had very good intentions with all of this, but it was so saccharine-y sweet.
And let's not forget that, okay, so yeah, it's a noble thing to make a film about a child with spinal bifida and to kind of be inclusive. But it's kind of totally tone deaf to have this major scene with a dance number, which of course he cannot participate in.
Yes, exactly.
Real smooth move there. It makes him totally on the outside. And this is like their big moment. It's like the big dance scene to do the McDonald's tie-in and all that.
Okay, kids, let's get this dance contest going.
Okay, yeah, so they're talking about why this scene was in the movie in this article with Thrillist, and the director says, we were talking earlier about how seemingly sad it was to have this child in a wheelchair watching people dance that he can't participate in. And the director's response was, when I make a movie, I don't want to just make a movie. I want to make the movie revenues, the video revenues. I want to do a book. I want to do a soundtrack. That's why that was in there. So I would love to read the Mac and Me book. I'm sure that's a fine piece of literature.
I would just love to hear the rationale of how he thought Mac and Me would even lead to any of those things.
I mean, he had a whole grand vision, and also it says here the music supervisor looks like he commissioned original tracks from Ashford and Simpson.
Oh boy!
And for the soundtrack, and also Alan Silvestri, of course, the Back to the Future did some of the score as well. So there's something to do with that, and then it says here, the key is I want to make a feel-good movie. You walk out and you're feeling good and you had fun. And I mean, and let's say that even though the movie was a failure and disaster, you got to say that you walk out, if you laughed your ass off, and I there's some truth to that. So we'll give it.
Yeah, I think so too.
We'll give
I
him
mean,
that.
you could also have had fun in being infuriated walking out.
Yes.
That would also be fun.
Which is really, when we're talking about this podcast, that's really the whole basis of the thrill of being infuriated. That could be the tagline for this whole show. So,
yeah, exactly.
So I think that can be that. And the alien, it's got my vote for most punchable alien.
Yes,
because they look like it was constantly like exhaling some kind of.
And its cheeks were kind of puffy too,
But puppy cheeks is always kind of blowing like this, like a little like a fish, almost kind of like a blowing out like a like a puffer fish.
Yeah,
and it was,
but also the thing about that character too, or that not character, whatever it was, it was so stiff. It was so stiff. I mean, it was really, it was as stiff as a ventriloquist dummy, just like it was covered in latex. It had its head could only swivel, like a ventriloquist dummy. It's like, it just didn't seem like it had any type of, like support to it at all. I mean, it was like it was just all support. There was no like movability. I just don't understand why they couldn't spend a little bit more on the creature.
And let's go back to that wheelchair scene. Can you refresh me on that? Because I forgot exactly the circumstances that led to that child falling down a cliff on a wheelchair. But
if I vaguely remember it, there was something to do with, and I may be missing it. We'll have to look it up and maybe have to re-record this. But it seemed to be that there was some kind of chase or bicycle race or something going on. They were on a road, and he somehow got funneled onto like a road. And so before the scene is coming up, he's kind of on the road, and there are cars zipping by, and I believe someone swerves, and he has to swerve and goes down this embankment in the wheelchair. But he never falls out of the wheelchair. This thing is bouncing at an insane rate down this hill, and they sped the film up, which made it look that much worse. And he goes just straight down this incline and off the end. So I mean, there's no point to have any of that in the film. Also, if you're championing people with disabilities and this sort of thing, because this is also like, I don't know, it's a little insulting to me too. You're just like just throwing, like, you're just putting it down the hill. I mean, I know it wasn't. I think they actually said that in it wasn't like a dummy for a lot of that.
No.
That going down the hill, it was him. And
I mean, that's what I'm reading right now. It said that the main actor, his name was Jade Category, which I thought would say category. I misread his name for a second. But
we are the Jade Category.
Yeah.
Crime syndicate for messing up.
But he performed the hill portion of the stunt himself, and it says here where he tried to make it as kinetic and energetic and have some physicality. Now, they're lucky they didn't kill that kid, because that was a steep ride. They're saying here that the crew members took up positions to catch him, and wheel stabilizers assured he wouldn't fall too quickly, but they were still dangerous. It's very hard to do physical things when you're in that condition. It's very hard to make a wheelchair work because it's not a very balanced thing. When you start going fast in a wheelchair, you place tremendous risk on the child, so you have to try and figure out how to do that in a controlled fashion.
How about you don't do it at all? I mean, come on.
So I'm glad that they pulled it off, and but it could have been like a Twilight Zone the movie kind of thing, and that could have gone right off a cliff.
I mean, I'm glad they pulled it off, because that's what makes it so funny, is you can see it's the real kid. I mean, and it wasn't supposed to be funny. That's the damn thing about it, is that's what makes it funny, is you can see that it's the real kid. You can see that it's slightly controlled because he's bouncing, but he's really not bouncing like he should be down the hill. That makes it that much funnier, and then it's sped up. So, but I mean, was that such a climax that you had to have that in the film? I mean, that's I mean, we got to get this shot. I know it could kill the kid. I know this could be the kid's last stunt, but we gotta get this shot. It's integral to the film.
And I guess it proved them right. That's the one thing that's been shown on the internet. It has that in that scene lives in infamy.
They proved me wrong.
And then of course the big thing in Mac and Me, what made it different from E.T., their big twist was that instead of E.T. having to fly off and leave Elliot by himself, and this time it was a happier ending because Mac and his family immigrated to America in a very protracted, annoying, and really stupid scene in a courtroom, if you recall, Weren't they all wearing suits?
Yes.
Yeah, trying to integrate into society by wearing suits, which is completely just not a smooth move, and
yeah, and just the whole concept of the alien immigrating to America to getting citizenship with that had nothing to do with any prior. That came completely out of the blue. At no point was there any setup to that whatsoever. It's just like, okay, we're gonna get him to America and get him. I just don't understand. Make him a citizen. It just really made no sense. And lest we forget, we have to remember to touch on the end credits scene at the end.
Oh, what happened? Refresh me on that, because I'm.
Oh, you remember? Remember, they're all driving down like Hollywood Boulevard somewhere in a pink Cadillac. Mac, the kid, and the family, and they wave as the car passes by, and as it passes by, and you see them go in the distance, and it says, "See you next time," and then Mac and Me Too coming soon, or something like that.
Oh yeah. So it says here, they drove down the Hollywood freeway. A speech bubble pops up and says, "We'll be back." And they weren't. That seemed to be a really big thing in the 80s, where they would try to, write a check their ass couldn't cash. like Flash Gordon did a similar thing, saying "the end" with a question mark.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Whereas almost every kid I know would have loved a Flash Gordon 2. No one really gave a shit about a Mac and Me 2 because they didn't know about Mac and Me 1. So that.
Well, I like a Flash Gordon now.
Yeah, that might be all right. All right, well, that wraps up this week for Smells Like Cinematic Sadness. Hope you enjoyed our takedown of Mac and Me. Like I say, if you've never seen it, you should check it out. If you go to our blog and you can see the blog page for this episode, you can actually purchase it from Shop Factory via our Amazon link if you're so bold and want to dare to experience the magic that is Mac and Me. Stay tuned next week. We'll be back. We'll be tackling the Leprechaun franchise. Also, for those who don't know, there's now a nice feature if you're listening on Anchor FM where you can actually support our podcast monetarily if you so choose. There's a way you can donate. Just go to the homepage for my podcast at anchor.fm/SLIS, and you'll see how you can be a supporter. Supporters will be able to get shout outs on the show. We'll take your requests for films to riff on, and you can be a guest on the show. So just a little shout out, thank you for helping us keep going. Always a pleasure. So thanks again for listening, and talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.